Ever wonder why your Hydrostone creations didn't turn out as expected? I'm going to share some game-changing tips that you can use right now that will elevate your Hydrostone candle jar making skills, whether you're a pro or a casual do-it-yourselfer. Let's go. Hi, my name is Jay Catalano. Links to any products used in this video will be in the description below. I'm going to do this in no particular order. Where to buy Hydrostone? Finding Hydrostone can be a bit of a pain in the ass. If I need Cementol, I can simply hop in my car and head to Home Depot. It's that simple. Hydrostone, however, is not so readily available. But don't worry, it's not impossible to find. One option is to check out an art supply store specializing in sculpture supplies. For example, there's a sculpture store about 40 miles away from me that sells Hydrostone. It's across state lines and it involves a toll fee, but it's manageable. I also found another sculpture store across a different state line that carries Hydrostone, although it's a bit more out of the way. So do some sculpture store searches in your area or a bit outside of your area and see if they sell Hydrostone. Another way to find Hydrostone is to contact Reynolds Advanced Materials. They have locations all across the United States, so there might be one near you. Fortunately, there's a Reynolds location not too far from me that sells Hydrostone. Another idea is to go online and visit the United States Gypsum Corporation, aka USG, which sells construction supplies globally, and check their where to buy section. Just type in your zip code and you'll get a few options. If those options don't pan out for you either, try using the website to find a representative in your area. Give them a call and ask where you can buy Hydrostone. And keep in mind that we're just a small fish in the Hydrostone pond, so don't be surprised if they don't get back to you right away. It took me 3 calls before I got a response from my rep. And ironically, I knew more about where to find Hydrostone than my rep did.
That's suspicious.
Lastly, you can do a Google search to find Hydrostone anywhere that sells it and have that location ship it to you. Now you might be wondering, anywhere I can find Hydrostone? What does that mean, Jay? What I mean is I found a place in Canada called Euclid's. They sell Hydrostone, and for the last year I have had it shipped directly to me. Yes, it's pricey. I paid nearly $40 a bag on top of the bag's cost, but I don't mind because it saves me from driving long distances, especially if I only need 1 or 2 bags. The downside is that after sharing that information about Euclid's in previous videos, they now only sell 1 bag at a time and have raised their shipping rates. Oh well, it is what it is, but it's still an option. Storing and caring for your Hydrostone. To store Hydrostone effectively, it's important to place it in an appropriate storage location. Look for a cool, dry place that is away from the elements. Why? High humidity can adversely affect Hydrostone, so avoid storing it in areas prone to moisture buildup. Moisture plus Hydrostone equals an undesirable sculpture. Ideal temperatures for storage range from 50 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit, and place your Hydrostone in an airtight container like this one here, making sure that the container is clean so that you don't contaminate your Hydrostone. Additionally, avoid storing Hydrostone directly on concrete floors or surfaces that could transmit moisture. Quick story, about a year ago it was raining heavily overnight in my area. Coincidentally, my sump pump decided to go bad at the same time. When I woke up and went downstairs, my entire basement was flooded. Luckily, the containers protected the contents, but, and this is a big but, had I had it in its original packaging, my remaining Hydrostone would have turned into, you guessed it, an undesirable sculpture. Safety. I was talking to one of my students about the safety precautions of using and handling Hydrostone. Shameless plug. If you're interested in being a student of mine and mastering the art of creating concrete and Hydrostone candle jars efficiently with a clear step-by-step approach, check out my online course, The Winning Formula. My course is designed to save you time, money, and help you avoid any unnecessary headaches. Link is in the description. Anyway, my student wrote to me and said, in your course, we speak about the respirator, but I'm wondering, when should we take off the respirator? And when can we say that the room is safe again to breathe in? I responded, great question. I usually take off my respirator after I have completed my task and am ready to leave my room. There is always a possibility the dust lingers in the air, but if you clean often and wear your respirator, you should be fine. And by the way, if I'm not mixing any products together, I'm wearing an N95 mask and not my respirator. So the question becomes, why do I wear a respirator or N95 mask? Especially when people believe that Hydrostone doesn't contain silica sand in it. What is silica sand? Silica sand is a type of sand primarily composed of quartz particles and is harmful to breathe in because inhaling silica dust can lead to serious lung issues like silicosis and impaired breathing. And to clear up any misunderstandings, Hydrostone does contain silica sand in it, albeit a small amount, but, and this is an even bigger but, just because it's a small amount doesn't mean it can't adversely affect you if you aren't properly protected. Quick story. I quit drinking many years ago. I was at a party, and to fit in, I brought along with me some non-alcoholic beer. In total, I had 4 non-alcoholic beers within a short amount of time, and after I popped the cap on the 5th bottle, I started to feel woozy. I then told my then girlfriend I was feeling quite tipsy, yet only had non-alcoholic beer and nothing else. She looked at me with a look of concern and disbelief and asked me, well, how many have you had? I told her I was on my 5th. That's when she screamed at me. No wonder we're not together anymore. Are you nuts? Don't you know non-alcoholic beer has alcohol in it? What? I was dumbfounded, confused, in total disbelief. Why would non-alcoholic beer have alcohol in it? To this day, I still don't get it. The point of the story is that even though there isn't much silica sand in Hydrostone, there is a small amount present, and that small amount can, under the right circumstances, cause damage, if you catch my drift. Anyway, let's forget silica sand for a second. There are other chemicals that you don't want to be breathing in. Calcium sulfate dihydrate, aka gypsum, and calcium carbonate, aka limestone. Yes, Hydrostone is safer than Simmental, similar to how non-alcoholic beer has less alcohol than regular beer, but it still can affect you. Silicone bowls. I love these silicone bowls. In my opinion, they are a must-have if you are serious about being a concrete and Hydrostone candle maker. They are so flexible and very useful, as well as easy to work with. All you have to do is add your content to your bowl, mix it up, and squeeze the silicone bowl to direct your pour. Most importantly, cleanup is super easy. All you have to do is finish pouring your mixture into your silicone bowl and don't do a thing. Let the contents harden, crack it off, and wipe down the bowl. It's that simple. Take a look at these bowls. They practically look brand new, and they have been through a lot. Get some silicone bowls, you won't be disappointed. Silicone mats. The more careful I am with my mixing and pouring, the more my contents splash all over the place. Does that happen to you, or am I the only idiot? Don't answer that. Making Hydrostone candle jars can get messy. If you are using pigment, which we will discuss later, that mess can be even messier. So, if you find that your mixture jumps out of your silicone bowl and lands on your table, there are 3 ways to deal with it. The first way is to wipe it up immediately. The problem with wiping it up immediately is you might be in the middle of a pour and you need to concentrate on filling up your silicone mold properly, and if you have more than one, you could be there for a while. The other problem with wiping it up immediately is that color, especially black, leaves streaks. Once that happens, you will find you actually have to clean up a bigger mess than when it was in its original messy form. The second way to deal with it is to let it harden and then chisel it off once it's dry. The problem with this method is Hydrostone is a very hard substance, and will stick to certain surfaces, i.e., your working table. Also, when you go to chisel off those chunky Hydrostone parts, it can ricochet off of your spatula faster than Usain Bolt drinking a Red Bull. The third and best way is to use a silicone mat. If your mixture inadvertently jumps on your silicone mat, cleanup is easy. And if you decide to clean up any Hydrostone droppings right away, it doesn't streak as much when you go to wipe it off. And the best part, Hydrostone never sticks to silicone and it never leaves behind colorful residue if you decide to clean it up when it's still wet. It just wipes up with no hassle. Love it. How to add Hydrostone and water together. There are two logical ways to add water and Hydrostone together. You can add the water to the Hydrostone, or you can add the Hydrostone to the water. So my question to you is, which way is best? Do you know? And even if you do you know why? Or do you just follow what everyone else does? Quick story. I recently heard of a woman who used to bake bread and always trim the ends off the dough before placing it in the pan. When questioned about this practice, she explained that she did it because her mother had taught her to. Curious, she approached her mom and inquired why she had always cut off the ends. Her mother responded that it was her own mother that had taught her to do so. Seeking clarification, she then asked her grandmother the same question, and to her surprise, instead of hearing that it was a tradition passed down, her grandmother said that she did it because the bread never fit properly in the pan. So, you could just dump your Hydrostone into the water, but that will cause more problems than you can imagine. Instead of dumping, sifting should come to mind. If you sift your Hydrostone into water, then you will achieve a smooth, controlled mixing process, preventing issues like clumping and air bubbles. This method allows for the gradual addition of the plaster into the water, ensuring an even consistency without forming lumps. Moreover, adding Hydrostone to water reduces the risk of generating excess dust and promotes a safer mixing environment overall. Spread the knowledge. Water. Now that you know how to add Hydrostone to water, there is one thing you must understand. Not all water is made the same. Well, what I mean is that all water is not just a combination of H2O. All over the world, there are various chemicals or bacteria that are found in water that could affect how your pieces come out. Some of the chemicals that are found in water are chlorine, fluoride, heavy metals, lead, arsenic, mercury, pesticides, herbicides, industrial chemicals, nitrate, pharmaceuticals, and personal care products. And some of the bacteria that are found in water are E. coli, Salmonella, Legionella, and H. pylori, and a whole lot more. And the presence of chemicals and bacteria in water can impact your Hydrostone works of art. In addition, chemicals like heavy metals can affect the curing and strength. Bacteria such as E. coli can contaminate your vessels, causing defects or discoloration. Water quality influences setting time and finish, potentially leaving residue on your pieces. Now, I'm not saying you should run out and buy purified or distilled water. You can do that if you want, but it's not necessary unless you test out your works of art and find that there is actually an issue. If there is, it might be your water. Don't mix Hydrostone right away. Once you've sifted in the Hydrostone to the water, you are going to want to let the contents create a dry lake bed effect. What that means is don't mix your Hydrostone and water mixture together just yet. Let it sit for a few minutes until you see the Hydrostone absorbing the water, which will create the effect of a dry lake bed. This is important because it helps in the mixing process, making it easier to blend the water and Hydrostone together. In addition, it helps make the mixture smoother overall, eliminating some of the bubbles in the process. Keep in mind that just because the water and the Hydrostone are placed in the same bowl doesn't mean that the process has begun. In fact, the necessary reaction we need to get hydrostone to harden doesn't start until you agitate the hydrostone. Interestingly, the longer it sits, the less mixing we have to do and the smoother the consistency will be. However, don't let it sit for too long.
Waiting.
15 minutes is fine, so if you have a few things to do while you're making your candle jars, this waiting period is the perfect time to do so. Using pigments, paints, or dyes. When using pigments for optimal results, add the pigment to the water first and then combine it with your other ingredients. This method generally gets you better results. By adding pigments to the water initially, it facilitates a more uniform distribution of color throughout the mixture. This method helps prevent clumping of pigments, ensuring a smoother integration into the overall mix without creating uneven patches or streaks of color. Additionally, blending pigments with water before combining them with the hydrostone powder makes the entire mixing process easier and more effective, allowing for better control over color intensity and consistency. If you're using acrylic paint, add it after your mixture is prepared. Be cautious with acrylic paint, as excessive use can thicken the mixture and affect its adherence. One of the best things you can do to assure this doesn't happen is to use a little water to cut or dilute the acrylic paint. Don't use too much water. Too much water will add more water to your mixture, which will inadvertently weaken your creation. For best results, try diluting your paint with no more than 10% of your acrylic paint. So, if you are using 10 grams of paint, add 1 gram of water. If you're using 20 grams of paint, use 2 grams of water. Can you use more? Yes, but by adding more water, not only do you potentially weaken the integrity of the vessel, but you also affect the durability and vibrancy of the paint as well. Lastly, RIT dye. Due to the porous nature of hydrostone, dipping your vessels or hydrostone creations into RIT dye is a bit tricky. It can be done, as seen here, but the colors usually aren't as vibrant as with concrete. For best results, let your hydrostone works of art cure fully and then dip. There are other RIT dye methods that yield better results. For example, you can add RIT dye color to your water and then add in your hydrostone. Don't replace your water with your RIT dye though, that's just irresponsible. Remember, chemicals affect the hardening process and RIT dye isn't what hydrostone needs to solidify. Regardless of the color additive chosen, it's crucial to follow specific techniques for each. Avoid interchanging techniques among these different methods. One golden rule across all approaches is the 5% rule. Aim to add no more than 5% of your colorant to your mixture to achieve the desired effect. This obviously doesn't apply to dipping with RIT dye, but for every other approach, 5% and no more. I know what you're thinking. What is 5%? For example, if you're using hydrostone with a 3-to-1 ratio, 300 grams of hydrostone, 100 grams of water, you would add up to 15 grams, 5% of 300 grams, of your chosen colorant. Exceeding this 5% threshold can compromise the integrity of your works of art. Why is this important? Because if you're planning to sell your pieces, which why wouldn't you? You will want them to be the strongest pieces possible, because you never know what someone is going to do with your creations. Make them strong. Marbling. There are many different ways you can marble when using hydrostone. You can marble with acrylic paint, pigment powder, RIT dye, or my favorite, 2 different hydrostone colors. Like the various coloring techniques above, marbling has its own set of best practices. For example, if you are using acrylic paint, it's best to cut the paint like I talked about before, which will give you a little more flexibility when adding paint to marble for your mixture. Another example is adding pigment powder to a hint of water, then swirling that colorful mixture around your mix, which reaps nice marbling patterns. A third example is using RIT dye, which can be used similarly to pigment powder and water. However, you don't need to add more water to your RIT dye. All you have to do is swirl a little RIT dye around your mixture and voila, marble RIT dye. Lastly, as I said above, my favorite is the 2 or 3 different Hydrostone color combinations. All you do here is mix 2 or 3 different pigment powders into your Hydrostone to create 2 or 3 different colors you want to add together. Then you slowly add your 2 or 3 tones together, give it a swirl, and voila, a stunning marble pattern. However, with all this color and marbling that I'm sure you are interested in doing, you must understand that the more color or additive you add to your mix, the weaker it gets. So don't forget the 5% rule. Sanding. Sanding Hydrostone is generally easier compared to sanding concrete due to the differing properties of these materials. Hydrostone is known for its softer and more easily workable texture. When fully cured, it tends to be relatively smooth and can be sanded down easily without excessive effort. If you need to sand down the bottoms of your candle jars because of a few bubbles or rough edges, no problem. Easy peasy. Now I know what you're thinking. Okay, Jay, that's nice to know. So you can sand Hydrostone more than concrete. Thanks for the amazing tip, Jay. This guy. But this is more important than you realize, especially if you enjoy making terrazzo candle jars. Take a look at this terrazzo jar I made using Hydrostone. It took me 3 minutes to get it to look like this. Now, take a look at my terrazzo Cementol candle jar. It took me 10 minutes to look like this. Now, do you see why sanding is a tip worth mentioning? You're welcome. Silicone molds. Keep in mind, especially if you're new to the demolding game, Hydrostone, like concrete, gets hard when it hardens. What I mean is, most silicone molds are made with silicone that is quite taut. Demolding a hard substance like Hydrostone might not seem like much at first, but if you demold 5, 10, or 20 Hydrostone jars at one time, you'll look like Emperor Palpatine from the Return of the Jedi at the end of your demolding session. Demolding Hydrostone jars can be quite the workout and really tough on your hands, especially as you get older. Now, fortunately, I'm very young, and so this doesn't concern me at all. I'm just thinking of all you old farts out there watching. I'm just kidding. In all seriousness, there is a solution to demolding Hydrostone jars with absolutely no pain whatsoever. Buy Silicone Molds. That's right. Buy Silicone Molds are some of the easiest silicone molds to demold. Don't believe me? Take a look at this. I have 2 cylindrical silicone molds that are quite similar in size and shape. The first one is from Amazon, which I've used at least 100 times. The other mold is from Buy, which I've only used a couple of times. Naturally, they look different too. The Amazon mold is straightforward, just silicone with no extras. Buy mold, on the other hand, comes with a support brace and 2 clips. It also has a lid, unlike the Amazon version. Both are ready to be demolded. My objective is simple: demold them as quickly as I can. I'm going to start with the Amazon silicone mold first. The total time was 25.29 seconds. Now it's time to demold Buy silicone mold. The total time was 10.90 seconds. As you can see, Buy silicone mold with its support brace, clips, and lid was much quicker to demold compared to the Amazon silicone mold that I had to struggle with. In percentage terms, the Buy silicone mold took me 56.91% less time to demold than the Amazon silicone mold. And if you're going to demold multiple Hydrostone candle jars, you need the right silicone molds to not only handle the job, but protect your hands at the same time. Demolding times. Depending on where you live in the world and how big your item is, curing times will vary. Personally, I can demold a Hydrostone vessel in 30 minutes. A larger vessel with thicker edges can be demolded in 45 minutes. However, if you live in a very humid place like Florida during the summer and you aren't able to control your humidity levels in your workspace, you might have to wait longer to demold your works of art. And keep in mind, a place can be cold and humid as well. Humidity isn't tied to heat. If you really want to test the demolding times for your specific situation, take a little time and create something you want to test and demold it at certain time frames. For example, if you know you can demold something successfully at the 45-minute mark, try one at the 40 mark the next time and go down from there. Eventually, you will find a point where it isn't ready to be demolded. Then add back 5 minutes for precautionary reasons, and voila, you have yourself the perfect demolding time for your situation. Finding the right demolding times might not be important for the casual creator, but for those who rely on the sales of their creations, this number is very important. Why? It allows you to free up the silicone mold you are using a bit faster so you can put it to use as quickly as possible. Do not water bathe. The only reason I'm adding in the do not water bathe tip in this video is because due to environmental reasons, some people have to water bathe their concrete creations. For that reason, I get a lot of questions on whether or not one should water bathe their Hydrostone works of art. The answer is no. The reason cement doll concrete creations need water bathing while Hydrostone creations do not comes down to their different compositions and how they set. Cement doll is mainly made of cement, which needs water to start and speed up the chemical reaction that makes it harden. This reaction, called hydration, happens when water reacts with the cement particles, turning them into a strong, solid material. Without enough water, cement doll won't set properly and might end up weaker or less durable. Hydrostone, on the other hand, is a type of gypsum plaster. Unlike cement, gypsum plaster, like Hydrostone, doesn't need continuous exposure to water to set. Instead, it sets through a process of crystallization within the material itself. Once mixed with water and poured into the silicone molds, Hydrostone undergoes a chemical change that allows it to harden without needing additional water during the curing process. So, no matter where you live in the world, you don't need to water bathe your Hydrostone works of art. Curing! Curing is one of those things that most people don't think about when they start making Hydrostone candles. I know I didn't. However, Hydrostone is very porous. How porous, you ask? Hydrostone is so porous, when you look up the word porous in the dictionary, there's a photo of a Hydrostone candle jar. I'll show myself out. Hydrostone needs to be cured before using it to reach its maximum strength and harden. During curing, the material undergoes essential chemical reactions to fully develop its internal structure. Using it before it's cured, for example, sealing it too early, can trap moisture, potentially weakening the structure and affecting its appearance and texture. And if you were to seal an uncured Hydrostone candle jar and burned a candle with the moisture trapped inside, that moisture would eventually look to push its way out from the harsh conditions that a burning candle puts it through. This can lead to bubbling, flaking, cracking, and breakage. If you want to know how long it takes for your Hydrostone creation to lose all or most of its water weight, you are simply going to weigh your vessel daily starting on the day you demold it. Once the vessel starts to maintain its weight, or really close to it, your vessel is cured enough to move on to sealing. But don't worry, I'll talk about sealing in a minute. Foil, paint, or labeling. After your Hydrostone creation is cured, you might have thoughts of adding things to the outside of it. You could add silver or gold foil, you could paint or stencil on it, or you could just be adding a label such as a transfer label. If you have a desire to add foil to your Hydrostone jar, you can use a glue specifically for foil and then attach your foil on top of the glue. Pretty simple. Or you can do what I do. I use Earth Safe Finishes sealant as an adhesive to add my foil by adding sealant on the spot where I want to add the foil and then adding my foil on top of the sealant. And remember, we aren't sealing yet, we're just adding the foil. Now, if you want to add foil to your silicone mold, you can do that too. Hydrostone is made in such a way that it will adhere the foil when you go to remove your hydrostone creation from the silicone mold. It's not so forgiving with concrete, but with hydrostone it is. If you want to add a transfer label, add the label first, and then when it's time to seal, you can seal it. Keep in mind, you aren't sealing in a regular label, just a transfer label. If you have desires to paint or stencil on top of your hydrostone creation, then you could add your paint or stencil, let it dry, and then when it comes time to seal it, you can do so then. And speaking of sealing, sealing! Now that all your fancy embellishments are dry and on top of your creations, you can start to seal. Why do we seal hydrostone? Remember, hydrostone is porous, so not sealing it can potentially ruin your creation as liquids will look to seep out or potentially penetrate back in. Unfortunately, if you are a candle maker, hydrostone only has one sealant that we can use thus far. There might be more sealants that we can use, but each sealant I've tried has failed. Eco Advance, Rutland's, Homax, fail, fail, fail. But why does it fail? Using a concrete sealant on hydrostone often leads to failure due to the fundamental differences in composition and properties between concrete and hydrostone. Hydrostone is a gypsum-based material, while concrete typically consists of cement, gravel, sand, and water. Concrete sealants are specifically formulated to bond with and protect concrete surfaces, which have a porous and mineral-rich structure. In addition, hydrostone is more delicate and porous with a smoother texture compared to concrete. When a concrete sealant is applied to hydrostone, it may not effectively penetrate or adhere to the surface, leading to poor bonding and eventually failure of the sealant. Additionally, hydrostone is more susceptible to water absorption and may react differently to sealants designed for concrete, further contributing to the ineffective sealing. Luckily though, we have Earth Safe Finishes sealant to help save the day. Both Earth Safe Finishes sealant and Hydro Dip are equipped to handle the job. Calcination. What is calcination? Calcination refers to the process of heating a material to a high temperature to cause chemical or physical changes. Anything over 125 degrees and calcination can start to occur in hydrostone. Now, if you subscribe to the theory that all candle jars should never exceed 140 degrees in temperature, then you only have 15 degrees to think about. 140 minus 125 equals 15. And using a reliable sealant such as Earth Safe Finishes Hydro Dip can significantly enhance the protection of your jar in this context. If you don't think that 140 degrees is accurate, it is, and you believe a candle jar's surface temperature can be higher, it can, then you have more to worry about if you use hydrostone. Now, will a sealant guarantee that you won't get a hydrostone cracked if the temperature reaches 140? Cover the kids' ears now. Think of a sealant like a condom. No worries, this is as deep as I go, no pun intended. Condoms are 98% effective, but 2% of the time, this happens. In all seriousness, I don't know what the rate of success of a sealant on a candle jar that is 140 degrees is, but I have never had a hydrostone candle jar crack on me, except for one. That one time was when I poured my candle wax into the hydrostone candle jar at 175 degrees. As I started to pour, I heard a crack, and then another, and then a third. From that point on, I learned that I can only start to pour my candle wax into my hydrostone jars at about 150 degrees or lower. And just so you know, after making that change, I have never had a cracking issue after that. Now you might be thinking, Jay, I heard that I need to pour my candle wax in my candle jar at a high temperature because it helps with hot throw. Bullshit. There, I said it. Bullshit. There, I said it again. There is no scientific proof that is an actual thing. Is it possible you can find people who swear that your hot throw is stronger when you pour at higher temperatures? Well, there are still people in the world who believe that the earth is still flat, so I guess anything is possible. But like I said before, bullshit. And take a look at these videos that are popping up now. They're gonna help you on your concrete, hydrostone, and candle making journey. Until next time, thanks for watching. Ciao.